come to Checkendon today to try and find the most northerly frescoes in Britain at the very least, and possibly in the world. Now, it had always been my understanding that the most northerly frescoes were in the Palace of Westminster, the Houses of Commons, but I have heard that some churches have older medieval frescoes even further north, and the one that I've heard about is this one here in Checkendon. So this is what I've come to see today. This is a lich gate, as they're called, and this also serves as the village's war memorial. If I steady the camera a bit, you can see a couple of names carved into the top. Now, the main body of this church is 15th century, but it has been on this site since the 7th century and was one of the first churches founded by St. Birinus, known as the Apostle to the West Saxons, because he came over from Rome to convert all the Anglo-Saxons, specifically the West Saxons, to Christianity. This bit is the oldest that still exists. Look at all the snowdrops. They're really pretty. This area is also known for bluebells. It's got a big heavy door. Whoop. Big iron handle, and then we're inside after a bit of a drop down. And what a lovely space it is. Lovely gold bosses on the joists. It's quite a small church. It's a fairly small and understated village. Medieval wall painting there. Now, fresco is incredibly sensitive to moisture in the atmosphere. So the further north you get, the wetter it gets. So seeing these as far north as Oxfordshire is pretty astounding. I was sort of expecting them to have crumbled away. And there's Jesus up there. And I believe these are the 12 apostles. You may notice that we're missing a few. That's because this window was put in and that cut 2 of them out. The Victorians put in the stained glass. It's not medieval stained glass. So I think these are the most northerly I've seen. I don't know exactly what distance up we are here. It's going to be around 53 degrees north. But we're definitely north of Westminster. I have heard there are a lot in Denmark. And Denmark's on a fairly similar latitude to England, so it's possible that 1 or 2 of theirs are further north. And it may be that there are some further north that I don't know about. But Checkendon in Oxfordshire is definitely the most northern I know of. Frescoes are painting directly into wet plaster. And that's how a lot of paintings used to be done. Don't know what this one was meant to be of. You can see a knight there on horseback being prayed to, benedicted to. I don't know exactly what the man on the left is doing. The Victorians did a lot of work to this chapel to make it better for the local community. They redid the floors, they put in new windows to make it lighter and airier. They added several bells. There are, I believe, 8 bells here. Many of them are Victorian. And they put in these modern stained glass windows. And one of the last additions, I'm going to have to work really hard to get it to work in the light, is an engraved window here by Lawrence Whistler, who is very famous. He is an artist who is famous for engraving glass especially, but he worked in many mediums. Some of his work, well, bits of his work are all over. There's a village in Hampshire that has it. Lots of the ones in Berkshire and Hampshire have bits of his work. There's a beautiful piece in Salisbury Cathedral as a monument to the fallen in World War I and as a monument to Salisbury Cathedral itself. I'm going to try fiddling with the focus See if I can get this window in shot. Yeah, there we go. There you're getting a bit of it. That's the beautiful engraving. The human eye is much better at picking it up. It's much better in person. So there are two knights, one in each window, being lit up by the light of God, or I guess the sun. And in the centre is the cup of the Eucharist with a Cairo symbol on it, and wheat. And yeah, it's very beautiful. Real shame that the light is bleaching it so heavily. There you go. That's a good view. Now you can see the knight and the Eucharist cup and all of that. There we go. I knew fiddling around with camera settings would make that work eventually. And now the rest of the church is pitch black. There we go. In thankfulness and praise to God for my two sons, Basil Moon, who fell in action in Flanders 24th of May 1915, and his brother who was spared, both of the 8th Battalion, London Regiment. So I don't know which saint it is. Oh, it's St. George. Okay. Yeah, he's on top of a dragon. It's clearly St. George. I thought it was a woman to begin with. I feel bad. It just had a womanly look about it. Slightly fey, but I guess that was the Romantic movement for you. Another bit about these frescoes. In the Reformation, these were covered up by plaster, whereas most were destroyed, because there would have been similar paintings all over Britain as part of the Catholic Church. But these were covered up by plaster rather than being destroyed, and when the Victorians were renovating, they discovered them. So we're very lucky to have them. They have been restored slightly. Some people have suggested that it's an over-restoration, that they were always quite pale and faded, but nonetheless it's nice to see. And these are 1300s, so they are 700 years old, maybe a little less, between 600 and 700 years old, which puts them halfway through the life of this church. Quite like this one. This one's very pretty. This is a quite beautiful carving. You can tell it's Victorian. These Romanesque arches are very Victorian. They're characteristic of the Neo-Norman movement, which was itself an offshoot of the Gothic movement. And apparently it was never completely finished, as the sculptor died before he had a chance to finish it, but it does look quite beautiful in its own way. And I don't know, personally, what the final design was going to be. It doesn't look unfinished, but it may be that there was going to be more detail put into the figure than they got a chance to. But if that is the case, I think it looks quite nice, understated. Anyway, I came to find just the frescoes, and I ended up finding a really beautiful example of an English country church. So I'm very happy about that. And if these are the most northerly frescoes in Britain, if not the world, then I'd say this was a very good trip, because they are really fascinating. And I keep drifting the camera so Jesus doesn't get to be in it, because it's quite heavy. Don't know if you can hear that. That's the clock going. I believe it's 12 o'clock. It's up there somewhere.